Good morning, everyone. This morning we will have our own Reverend Denise who will be speaking to us about the upcoming Lenten Small Group series and the book discussion and Bible discussion that we'll be doing. And she'll be talking about Eugenia Anne Gamble's Love Carved in Stone, a fresh look at the Ten Commandments. And I would like to turn this over to her this morning, and she could start us with prayer.
Well, welcome those of you who are online and those of you who are here in the lounge. Happy to be here. And yes, would you join me in prayer? Holy and gracious God, we come to you this morning just thankful for the opportunity to gather once again in adult ed for stimulating conversations with great conversation partners. And so we, this morning we're looking at the Ten Commandments, and we just ask you to open our eyes and our hearts for a new perspective on how your word may live in the times in which we live. And so all these things we ask in the name of your son, Jesus. Amen. So I'm happy to, so wait a minute. Okay. So don't join audio, right?
No.
Oh, I did. Oh, wait, I'll do it. I'll go.
You're not on the audio. You're fine.
All right, sorry about that. Okay, so I saw that, so I'm not going to pay attention. So I wanted to start off, because this is really a conversation, and it'll be a little bit like how we'll do the Lenten Small Groups. And the topic we chose is partly because of, I was introduced to it a few years ago. You'll see from the cover of the book that it was the 1919 through 1920. I'm sorry, 2019. 2019. And Andy was just looking at me. 2019, 2020 Presbyterian Women Bible study and Love Carved in Stone. And it was just such a wonderful study. I was very impressed with it, and maybe because you've heard me maybe talk about it sometimes in sermons about how that a more contemporary look at it. And one of the things that really resonated with me was when she talked about thou shalt not kill. So when I use that in terms of the advertisement or the blurb for it, which is thou shalt not murder, thou shalt not kill, isn't just for you physically killing somebody or, stabbing them so that they were physically dead, but it also refers to whether or not you kill somebody's spirit. There's lots of ways to kill people, whether you assassinate somebody's character. We know that that's been in the news for the last several months, and large penalty fines don't seem to keep people from thinking that they should not disobey this law. So the study itself does cover the all 10 commandments, and we, because we'll only have 5 to 6 words. I'm sorry, we only have 5 to 6 weeks. We won't be able to cover all of them, but it's really a very timely study, I think, and it gives us a different way to look at our own faith journeys. And so this is why I selected it. But first, before I get started with a couple of things that I want to share with you about where we're headed in the study. Just either by show of hands or you can put in the chat. I'm going to ask 4 questions, and so and after each question, just for a brief minute, we'll let 1 or 2 people respond to this. So either here in the lounge or online. So I'd like some feedback from you. So like I said, we're having this study, and either yes or no. So like yes or no, and then if you choose to elaborate by responding in conversation, then you can tell me you either strongly agree or strongly disagree. So it's either yes or no, so you can either put in the chat yes or no, or you can do a raise of hands. I'll say yes, and then you can raise your hand yes, raise your hand no when I say no. So does everybody understand? I guess. Okay. So the first question is, I'm excited about a fresh look at the 10 Commandments because times have changed, and I think we need new ways to interpret them. So if you agree that you're excited about a fresh look at the 10 Commandments, okay. So in the room, we got majority people. What about what's online? We got people there. All right. And anybody want to comment on why you are? So just one or two people. Jack, I see you kind of pausing, ready to say something maybe. No? No. Okay. Anybody want to comment?
Online, Joni and Alvin and.
I'm trying to get back to video. It's breakfast time here. Sorry, people. So I keep flipping in and out. Yeah, I think the world has gotten to be a very much more unpleasant place in the last few years. And especially in the United States, I think people are not as kind to each other as they used to be. And I would like to see some of that come back.
Anybody else?
I would just add that to what Joni has said, that I feel like sort of we've lost any kind of set of decorum or as far as behaviors or expectation as far as behaviors are concerned. That's not that I feel like we have to have a code per se, but looking back at the dimensions of the 10 Commandments, it sounds like a good way to start.
Okay, thank you, Carol. All right, second question. I think Jesus replaced the 10 Commandments with love God and love neighbor. So whether you think Jesus replaced the 10 Commandments with love God, love neighbor, those that agree, raise your hand. And those who, any hands? Okay, those hands. Any disagree? Okay, so would somebody like to tell me why you said no? I didn't see hardly any. Diane?
Sure. I think he even says he was a practicing Jewish person and he came to fulfill the law, not to necessarily replace the law. And there's a number of statements in the New Testament that point to that fact that the law still held, but he went to the spirit of the law rather than to the literal interpretation of the law. So, for instance, they accused him of not honoring the Sabbath. And he said, I think that helping our neighbor is more important than just being strictly observant for the sake of being strictly observant. So that is why I think.
This may be a side, but you love your God. But the ministry of Jesus had something entirely new for Judaism, and that is God loves you. This is extraordinarily uncommon in any of the ancient religions, and even in Judaism. The fact that God actually loves us, despite all of our weaknesses, all our frailties, all our stupidities, God loves us. And so that was brand new. It didn't replace anything.
Right.
But it was something that Judaism never really had come across. God was a fearsome God who could punish you. You should be careful not to offend God with your sins. But Jesus said there's more than that. This is God who loves you.
Yeah, thank you, Jack. That is a really important part, and so thanks for that clarification. That is one thing that we will be covering in the book. So it's not just a standalone going through what is in Exodus and Deuteronomy. That will also during study be looking at the New Testament, and you'll see that in handouts. So we'll put it on the screen in a minute, but those of you who are here, you can see on the handout that there's a column that shows where as we look at the laws, the original laws, and actually there were two. So in two different passages, and we'll talk about that in a minute, that we will look at the New Testament to see what law in, what in the New Testament that Jesus has taught or how Jesus is living coincides with that. All right. All right, so go from a numbers from 1 to 10. So you can just sort of shout out, because I don't want you to raise your hand on this one. So you can just either shout out and say, or you can write down if you're embarrassed to say the number. So from 1 to 10, how many of the 10, what number would you be able to remember that you might be able to name? So there's 10 commandments. Can you name all 10? Can you name 7 of them? How many do you think you could name?
7.
7. So we got 7. Anybody else?
I make the confession, I can remember 8 and I just pulled.
Sorry, you're cheating.
So Patty 8 would help, okay? Very well, I couldn't remember. Okay, anybody else? Okay, well, let's quickly go through them. So just holler out, and you don't have to say them exactly correctly. So what are some of the commandments?
Oh my God.
There shall be no other gods before me.
Okay, so no idols, no other gods, so
No
let,
other God before me.
okay, no other gods, okay, and then go ahead, keep on. What's the other one about God?
Do not take the Lord's name in vain.
Okay.
Honor your father and your mother.
Okay,
My mom always used to tell me.
okay, all right, honor parents,
Adultery.
okay, so thou shalt not commit adultery, or not kill.
Sabbath day, observe the Sabbath.
Okay,
Yeah, there we go.
so don't kill, observe the Sabbath,
Don't covet.
okay, so don't covet, right? Okay, what is the other one? Couple more.
Don't steal.
Don't steal, very important. And then what's the other one?
Don't bear false witness.
Don't bear
Ah,
false witness.
very good.
And she calls it do not lie. All right. So of those 10, I just would like to hear from a couple of people, what could be, so one of these 3 questions, what is either the most intriguing to you, which commandment, which one is difficult to you? So you think of it as it's kind of difficult, or which one would be really easy for you to keep? So any comments about that? Intriguing, difficult, or easy to keep?
One, love thy God, number 1,
Okay,
first commandment.
okay. It would be, is,
Easy for me to keep.
okay, so easy to keep, so love the Lord, you, okay, go ahead.
I think most of us have totally written off the concept of observing the Sabbath.
Well, we'll have, maybe we should just have an adult ed that just only talks about the Sabbath, okay? So you invite me back to that.
Have a small group.
We have a small group, but we could talk about it for 45, 50 minutes. I'd love to, because you know, that's kind of one of the things I love, trying to observe more diligently and consistently. Anybody else?
Yeah, I kind of went the other way with the Sabbath, that once I kind of connected to it as a practice, it felt like such a refuge from our over-programmed culture. And I really embraced it, like, okay, this is the day of rest.
Okay.
And it's hard to go back once you've done that.
Yeah, I would agree with you. So that was a good one, and so we could talk about that at another time, yeah. Anybody else? What are either intriguing, difficult, or easy to keep?
I don't worry about murdering.
Yeah.
You feel like.
Yeah. How
Well,
about a country that murders?
Oh,
How about what would you say?
yeah,
Good one.
okay,
I didn't hear what you said.
How about a country that murders?
Right,
Oh, part of one.
yeah. So on that, there are what we call peace churches. So I don't know if you're familiar with that. Yeah. So and they have taken a covenant basically to support the nonviolence and not you know, the non-war.
My
So,
family's been Quaker, so, yeah.
oh, okay, all right. All right, so we have a lot of you seem really interested in this topic. And,
I think common is the hardest.
yeah, I agree with that. You want to say more about that?
Well, I mean, here we are in a society of social media where our kids, you know, want to be like everybody else, and we have these idols that we have, and it's just, and we're so commercialized, and it's hard not to want things, and it's all about Taylor Swift.
She's in the beat out.
Right, so, and hearing about her quite a lot, recently in the headlines, I think as I was walking out the story headlines, Republicans are worried about Taylor Swift, so. Yeah,
I don't think.
so, okay. All right, so those are, just to kind of warm us up to get us started, and then, we'll turn to an overview of the lesson in just a few minutes. Some of you, like I said, have it on your chair. So the Ten Commandments, can be studied, very fruitfully in a lot of different ways. And so as we've sort of talked about it, you know, some of you even mentioned in some of your comments, you know, you can look at them literally. They're also looked at as symbols of a way of life for a particular theology. So all of the three Abrahamic faiths, the Ten Commandments in some form, is part of that as building blocks of the society. And then there's the idea of going deeper to study the Ten Commandments, so that we understand not just the context of how they were constructed or how God gave these laws based on the time that they were given, but then also we have an invitation today now to look to see how they're relevant to us and our society. So the biblical context, when we talk about biblical context, the commandments really came about, as most of you know, what had happened in terms of the Israelites? What had happened? And where did they find themselves when these laws were given? Do you recall? Diane? But I was somebody else in it. Diane, she contributed quite a bit. Let's go with her voice.
So, you mean the Exodus or?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, and Moses and coming to rescue, the Jewish people and going to Mount Sinai.
Right. So leaving the death, I mean, they were rescued, the wilderness, rescued miraculously out of slavery. And then started with what we call the Exodus. And so they were headed, where were they headed?
Promised land.
Yeah, we call it the promised land. So it's land that God had promised them. And so basically, they were headed to this new land that they had been promised, that had been part of the Abrahamic covenant that God had given. And so, basically, I want to just clarify that the intention really is, and especially I guess because it was written in 2019, this particular study, but it would have been relevant, that the study won't really cover exactly whether or not politically it's really the promised land, and whether there's some biblical foundation to whether or not the Jewish people are the correct inheritors of that land. We're not gonna, I mean, we can acknowledge it, and if during the discussions there's some relevance to one of the laws, then we bring that up. But this isn't a study about that. So just kind of wanted to clarify that. So basically, once the people had left Egypt, and began to make the way toward the land that they were being sent to, the journey took a lot longer, and part of it we know is there was a need to take a more longer route because of for fear of coming in contact with other, foreign powers who might have overpowered them, and then they would have, you know, kind of been back in the same situation. But as the Israelites were in the desert, they began to get frustrated. They began to get tired. They began to wonder whether they were going to ever get there. And then they began to also think about and become nostalgic about where they had been. And maybe some of us have had that experience, that we try something new and it doesn't, you know, initially work out as glamorously. The honeymoon gets over real quickly. And we're, you know, lose the adrenaline and the excitement of where we're headed to. And so they begin to complain, you know. So the Bible, there's a term that the murmurings. So not just lightly complaining or saying, not like in the back of your car, mom, are we there yet? But no, these really grumblings and murmurings of wow, we should be back, you know, it wasn't so bad in Egypt, you know, how did you bring us out here into this desert? So for people who have been in bondage for 400 years, it was a need to reshape their mentality, because when you're in slavery, there are certain conditions that you really don't have freedom. You don't have choices about what you can or can't do. Your life is pretty much set for you in many, many ways. And so even the idea of Pharaoh allowing them to go out into the desert for just 3 days, that's what Moses asked for. Could we go out to just worship our God? That there was not even permission to do that. So to have to ask for permission. So then now this is, God needs to train them, needs to give them a new way of life, needs to change what the author is calling the slave mentality into a mentality of God's chosen people. To teach them the difference between that freedom also has choices. So you can make good decisions, or you might make bad decisions. And then it's not just choices, but then there's with the covenant that they are God's people. So not only are they God's people, or not only is God their God, but they are God's people. That there's this obedience, there's this reciprocity, there's this mutuality, that there's an expectation that that the people then make choices about being obedient. And probably in your sections, you'll get into that as far as, you know, obedience, because I know that's a big deal with Presbyterians sometimes, and some churches, especially some congregations, that people don't want to blindly obey. You know, there's some thoughts about it, but also to understand that obedience and disobedience result in consequences for that. So even though they were looking back at slavery, they weren't necessarily keeping in mind all the things that had been denied to them, and they really couldn't imagine what the future might look like. And so sometimes we say that. So Ephesians, you know, what I think you've heard me say, one of my favorite Bible verses is that Ephesians 3:20, where we say that God is able to do immeasurably more. So not immeasurably more than we can ask. So there are things that we know about, that we can ask about, that we can surmise, but even more than we can ask or even imagine. So these people felt in some ways that they couldn't ask for deliverance, but they kind of went along with Moses finally. And then, but the imagination for them just wasn't there about what this new life would be like. So we'll look at both of the scripture passages and study the differences and the implications of those differences. I think there's 3 laws, or 3 commandments in particular, that they apply to, that once we look at the difference between Exodus and Deuteronomy. And it basically, what we'll talk about though is that they were written at different times. They were written under different circumstances, and so it goes to us about how the Bible is actually a living document, that as we look at it today, that we'll come up with different ideas about how to interpret it based on our own culture. Obviously, there was no internet. There was, you know, just a lot of the modern things that go on today were not part of that culture. So there's no commandment that tells you about the internet. There's no commandment that tells you about how to have be courteous while you're driving and not, you know, rage at your neighbor or anything like that. But if we're looking at it from the viewpoint of God's love, that there are certain ways that we can look at it when we have an overall framework about how we decide what we do in this day and time. So the 10 words. So in the Bible, there's no, in the Hebrew documentation, the Hebrew writing of the law, there's no reference to commandment. They're written as laws, and they're also called words. So it's not to say that because we're calling them words that they don't have the same weight as laws, because they came to be known as the laws of the people. So that when the Bible talks about it, and especially in the New Testament, when they start referring back to, you know, obeying the laws, your people of the laws. In the Old Testament, you know, the Shema talks about, you know, passing these laws down to your children, and they'll write them in their hearts. So they're words, so they're words that were spoken by God, and they were spoken by God, you know, the narrative in our tradition says they were spoken by God, given to Moses. And the idea of it, where are other places in the Bible that we know God spoke something into being? In creation. Yeah, in creation. So in creation, God spoke and it happened. And in this instance, by giving the people the laws, speaking these words to the people, God is not only giving them moral direction about how to live, God is actually speaking into existence this new community that didn't have this framework, that didn't have the boundaries that it needed, or actual rules of behavior that would help to establish the type of community that God intended for the people of Israel to start. So when God spoke it, and I just thought that was just such a beautiful concept about God speaking into existence a new community. And I think about it in terms of what happens with us every week when we come for service and we're reading the Bible ourselves and we hear sermons from the pulpit, that's the word of God speaking, that we're looking at the words that God has given us. And God continues to speak into existence, the type of community that God hopes that we will have, based on where we are in this day and time and how we're looking at scripture. So the idea about where a sin is forbidden, what was emphasized in here is also the fact that the contrary, what she says is that the contrary duty is commanded. So that, in other words, what we're told that we're supposed to avoid it also tells us then what we're to embrace. So if you know that you're to avoid killing, okay, so then you're to embrace life and giving people life. And so I think the way that the author looks at this is more about ways that we give people life, and especially the law, or the word about honor your parents, that she looks at it in terms of not just your biological parents, but where are the places, who are the people that give us life, you know, who are the people that provide love for us. So it expands it in similar ways that, or she piggybacks on the ways that Jesus then expanded the laws, because there's lots of ways, and Carol, you were mentioning how we are so disrespectful that the society has really dumbed down in terms of being civil to one another. Our civility is just not what it used to be. So she looks at it as giving life. So what is forbidden isn't just, okay, this is forbidden, but then it also gives me some guidance about what to do. So if you can't do this, well then what should I do? So you do that. And the whole point of this, the whole study is that God loves the people and longs to bring life to our communities so that we live in harmony and joy and also in a deeper communion with God. So, and the reason for that then is that principled behavior. So learning how to behave more civilly, learning how to live in ways that God wants us to live, not just because God is arbitrary, not just because God likes to boss you around and tell you what to do, but the whole thing is that God is also protecting us. So the author, Gamble, Reverend Gamble, she calls it core harms or core wounds. So what we're looking at, and if those of you who look at your paper, I don't know, can you pull that up? Did you?
I'm gonna pull it up.
Okay. So basically, she looks at core wounds, and it's the core concept. We have concepts, but then there's the life wounds. So basically, if we look at the first, let's just sort of look at those of you who have it. So look at the first law. So skip the introduction, and so we have the first law. So read the core concept. Can I get somebody to read the core concept?
When God says, I am the Lord your God, and you shall not make for yourself an idol, God is inviting us to look only to God for our sense of worth, our power, and our most steadfast and true relationship. In Jesus Christ, we see God most clearly revealed and hear the call to love God, others, and self.
So this, you can see it hopefully on the screen. It's large enough for you to see. So, so then she talked about the life wound. So basically, when we are alienated from God, so if we're out of God's presence, out of relationship with God, then she says that there's this core wound or this core harm. And so would somebody else like to read what she calls the life wound?
Loneliness or separation from God,
That would be for word one and then word two.
helplessness and fearful desire for a quick fix.
Yeah, that whole quick fix has to do with having idols that we use to replace our love for God. And so, we talk about celebrity, money, our jobs, those are all things that are filling some kind of hole. So if we're estranged and we've turned away from God and not in relationship with God, there's an emptiness that we feel. And so we, instead of turning toward God to fill that emptiness, then we try to find it in other places. So we know all of the ways that, some of the ways that our common society has us do that. So she also talks about how the role of the Mosaic law for Christians is the heart of God's moral will for us is being articulated, that we're able then to see a mirror. It helps us be like a mirror to see where we need to change, and then tying it to the New Testament and Jesus, the life of Jesus, the life and ministry, death and resurrection of Jesus. Then we look at that and see then how we can become and grow more in the likeness of Christ. So Jesus, made the teachings plain. Jackie was, saying earlier how Jesus amplified on the laws and basically expanded on them in ways that were helpful to the people, because there had been all these other details that just made it more cumbersome in some ways to try to explain the Ten Commandments. So what came about from the Ten Commandments, you've heard it said that there were 613 other rules that people were expected to follow. So Jesus tried to make it easy, just make it simple for us in terms of interpreting what it was that we were to do, and how to follow that. So that's, you know, in terms of understanding, and those of you who are online, if you send me an email, then I can send you a copy of the chart that we were having here in our class here. So just a second. Sorry. So the class then, so this is a little bit about the class itself, that we will go through all of the commandments. I mean, there's opportunity to go through all of the commandments. But as I was telling you earlier, you could take this down. That we will only have, some of you may only have 5 weeks, you know, some will have the entire 6 weeks. So we'll look at whether or not, when the conversation leaders get together, we'll talk about whether or not we pick out some that we all study, and then maybe each of the various sections pick out, you know, maybe 2 of them or 2 or 3 that you really, really want to focus on. And so that would be maybe how we do it. So we just haven't talked about it yet. So, but that's what it'll be about. So as we look at the conversation, there's 4 questions that we'll be looking at in each lesson, and I'll just kind of read those. So, in a time of increasing relativism, what does this word say to me about how to be a moral Christian, both in personal and communal life? So that'll be one question we'll be looking at. And then it's, how do I live out this word in my relationship with God and with others in a world that is often ruled by other standards? And then what is the pain from which God seeks to protect me in this word? And how might that protection manifest itself in my life? So I really like the idea of this protection. I don't know how many of you had already looked at it like that there's a core wound that God was trying to protect us against. And I just thought it was a really, I just thought it was a really insightful way to look at it. Because once we understand something really, maybe it helps us to follow it more easily. So as long as we're not just thinking these are just arbitrary things, but when we go deeper and say, well, what bottom line is it trying to protect me against? But then not only protect me against, but if I follow it, what is it doing for the society? So if I don't do it, what does it do for the society? And then what if everybody in the society doesn't do it? Then what kind of community do we have? So what do you think about this idea of the core wound?
It simplifies what the main concerns. It really brings a message to something that is very deeply, emotions that we can experience every day.
She said, "Give the microphone."
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. So, all right. So Tammy was saying that it simplifies it, that it really helps us to understand the message in terms of how we're living it every day. Okay. All right. I'm sorry. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Well, in this hybrid world, and we
Right.
want to make sure we have each
Oh,
other
no,
in our wider community, which is wonderful.
Yes, yes. Okay, so anybody else in terms of this idea of the core wound?
I found it really intriguing, and I had not come across something like that before, and that was part of what really drew me in, was thinking about connecting, this very core teaching of scripture to that idea of what's happening within us, I guess, personally, or maybe even psychologically.
So Ally was saying that, she found it intriguing, because she also had not thought about it in that regard. But that, being able to look at it more in depth in terms of psychologically, what it was, how, whether we follow it or don't follow it, how it affects us psychologically, and then also the community. Anybody else? Oh, Kathy?
I also had not thought of it in that way before, and I think it also helps us think of how it applies today, more so than maybe the original language does.
Kathy said she thinks it helps helps us to think about how it applies more so than the original language. Yeah, so I mean, again, if we go back to the one about do not kill, so how many times have we said something that in the moment we can really see that we've hurt somebody's feelings, right? So, and that kills their spirit. And then when we think about our children, as adults sometimes that, we might be a little harsh, and so it's really detrimental in terms of children. There was something on the radio yesterday that the speaker was talking about how in childhood, when you're experiencing trauma, and that it actually there's markers then on your DNA, so that it's not, and you can pass that on.
And you can pass it on.
And you can pass it on. Yeah. So when we think about how we speak to our children, then it maybe allows us to feel like, and that would be building this whole new community, right? That God was talking about, that if we raise a whole new generation, and it's not to say you don't discipline your children, but there's ways that in our own anger sometimes, that there's a harshness that children feel, because they're so small, that they don't have, they're very, very sensitive. So, okay, anybody else about this idea of a core wound?
I think about, I've been struggling a lot with, what is it, how, we had a program about the nuns and the younger people that don't really want to be associated with the church. And then I think about, well, what is it about that we're doing as a church and Christianity to set people off, that they don't really want to be part of us? I don't think that we always know what following Christ might mean. It doesn't, should it be a snap thing that you're converted overnight, that you said you're a follower? Or is there a way of being, a way of feeling love? And I feel like we're in a world that's so divided because we're judging each other all the time. And how can we be open to a whole community where everything seems to be black and white? So these core wounds are real, and we really need, to be in community, we need to embrace each other and try to heal and to understand rather than to divide and judge.
So, I wanted to just sort of mention, we started off a little bit talking about the first commandment, about how God is our God, that we have a personal relationship, and that was a new concept, that it wasn't part of the Jewish theology in that same way. Having this image of us having this really personal relationship. And as I was looking at this particular lesson 1, and it's not, so we've read the commandments several times, right? So we've read them in Sunday school, we've studied them, we hear about them, out in society. And even if we don't go through all 10 at a time, that occasionally in sermons or what have you, we get bits and pieces of it. But coming back to this first one, where God is wanted the Israelite people to know that God was their God. I guess, and there was another idea that went with it, which was that I am your God, the God who brought you out of Egypt. So why do you think that that idea about naming that I'm the God who brought you out of Egypt, how does that tie to being their God, or what difference did it make? Any thoughts about that?
I'm reminded of making the golden calf. There are other gods to be had. Just give me your wedding rings and your other jewelry, and I'll make you a god. So this is the statement. No, you don't do that. There's one God, and who I am.
Okay. So I don't know if Jack said that making the calf in Egypt. Could you hear, Jack? I don't need to repeat those that you can hear. Could you? So, yeah, okay, so you heard it. Okay, all right, all right. Anybody else on that?
I think it personalizes, instead of this sort of abstract idea, sort of personalized to the experience. So, oh, I see, bring you like real closer.
Okay. Yeah, so Gina said it personalizes it, it brings it more closer or closer. So if I could just expand on that. Closer in the way that these are the Israelites and they are, who were the ancestors that the Israelite nation comes from? So who are they? They always talk about the God of this person, the God of that person, the God of this other person. So who? Yeah.
Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
All right, so Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So you're the God and the God of Abraham, and they always say, you're the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. So at the time that they are leaving Egypt, where are Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob? Yeah, they're dead. Yeah. I mean, not to be ugly or rude about it, but they're gone, so they're not there. They're not part of the Exodus with them, leading it or anything like that. They're respected ancestors, and they know that, but even over the 400 years, I mean, so that whole Exodus chapter starts off with the idea that Joseph had died, and the Pharaoh no longer remembered the relationship and who these people were, and became afraid of them. So then you have years and years of slavery. There was no ancestry.com. They weren't, when they came in from the pyramids, they didn't go to the computer to kind of, keep up with what, their heritage was and all of that. So the idea that the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, some of them had even forgotten, because what did Moses say? Who should I say sent me? So this is a new God. I mean, new in the sense it's their same God, but the idea of who this God is now going to be different to you. It's going to have a new idea. So 2-year-olds, when they're really starting to talk, and people talk. I have my grandson, my youngest grandson just turned 2 in January, and so 2-year-olds, what are they frequently? What do they frequently say? So I'm holding my glass case here, and Elaine looks like she might want to take it from me. So.
Mine.
Mine, right? Mine. Okay, so God is saying, and, God is saying, and I love, so if you do the study, the author gives a personal example that really almost brought tears to my eyes. Because when I think about it, it was so personal. So mine, right? That this belongs to me. So the Lord is our God. And I'll tell you, last year not many words about the Shema. We were using it during, what did we just have? Fall small groups. So as for breathing prayer to use, the Lord is our God. The Lord God is one. That is not hard. I mean, you should be able to remember it, right? And I'm telling you, I struggled with the first one because I was putting the emphasis on a different word. I wasn't putting the emphasis on the Lord is our God, which, and for whatever reason, because of, the our God and the Lord, I was mixing it up with the Lord God is one. And I'm telling you, I would have to turn around and look at it almost every time in order to make sure the first time I said it right. And as I was reading this and how she emphasizes it in the book and how God was developing it's a relationship. It's like, so we're almost like the 2-year-old now. We can say mine, mine. It's a personal relationship. But if I'm talking about my community, it's the Lord is our God. And, so and that grew. So we'll see in the New Testament that God was cultivating here to give the people of Israel that they were chosen for a specific reason. And like children, you have to teach them a little bit at a time. So they have to get used to, you don't take a 2-year-old. So my 2-year-old grandchild doesn't share very well, although he can parallel play with his brother, right? And they share a little bit sometime, but it's still a very mine kind of thing. But his 5-year-old brother is much more generous, and he understands the concept of sharing and what have you. And so it's the same way with us and with the Israelites, that they had to first understand that this was one God and it was their God. And so they could hold on to that. And I'll tell you, it just changed for me how to be able to remember that the Lord is our God. And then the Lord God is one. And and every time I say it now, it's just so powerful. I feel the personalness of it. So I'm going to finish because I know it's getting time. So the idea is that basically it wasn't the God, it was the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Joseph too. But the idea of saying that I'm the God who brought you who came out of Egypt, you who came out of Egypt, you who came out of Egypt, Denise, who came out of Egypt. So that it does become, as people have said over here, very personal now. And that's the beginning of cultivating a new relationship. So I just hope that you're intrigued. We're going to spend 5 weeks discussing, having great conversations, debating, looking to see how the laws relate to us, maybe more today in this way of looking at it than what they did. Not that we were going around breaking them. But yeah, so I guess I have 5 minutes and then I got to run off.
Talk about the upcoming meeting. Okay.
Okay. So we have, quickly, so we have we have Sunday classes. So Sundays at 7:30, depending, there's two of them, both in person and on Zoom. And then on Thursdays, 7 on Zoom. So there's some choices. There's still maybe some openings. So if you haven't signed up, then I encourage you to send an email.
thank you, Denise. I mean, thank you. How lucky we are to have you amongst us, leading us in so many different ways, but I think we all have a lot to those. I mean, I really highly recommend small groups. I feel like the heart of the church comes out among us when we participate. But thank you for your leadership. And this is a really exciting month for us. We have 3 nationally recognized scholars who will be presenting each week in the coming weeks. Next week, Shively Smith, who is the Old Testament scholar at Boston University, and she was the scholar in residence at the Cathedral of the American Metropolitan AME Church, will be presenting on Howard Thurman. She joined us last year. She's amazing, very, very, not only does she know the Bible, but her heart, her soul is, she's just so charismatic as a presenter. And she'll be talking about Howard Thurman and the connecting links of fellowship, and be tracing Howard Thurman's correspondence chain between him and Eleanor Roosevelt, Mary McLeod of Bethune, Martin Luther King Jr., and looking at his vision of fellowship for all people. I know it'll be a good session. The following week, we have Robbie Jones, who's just been on NPR. He is making the national tour, but he's joining us here in person, talking about the hidden roots of white supremacy and the path to a shared American future. We highly recommend your reading book if you have a chance beforehand. And then on the 25th, we have Denise Domkowski Hopkins, who will be looking at the Bible as a source of resilience. And she's joined us in the past, and we're so lucky that she is emeritus now, but she's the Old Testament theologian at Wesley Seminary. So if at all possible, join us and tell your friends about these programs. We have a wonderful community here, and we'd like to keep it going and alive. And we have also another national person with us, Allison, who is going to be joining us in the spring. So in a program, but we'll love to have us. And thank you all for being here. Thank you. Have a wonderful week and beautiful weather.
The speakers you just announced, are they in person or on Zoom?